Welcome everybody. I hope you are having a great day. Let's talk once again about censorship and Twitter election interference and Twitter. And this time we need to talk about Uganda and how Uganda is leading the way in blocking big tech election meddling. And this story is hot and it is fantastic. At the end of the video, I'm going to play you a segment from Tucker Carlson tonight where he just has a great time discussing what's happening with the censorship of Twitter in Uganda because Twitter is interfering in Ugandans' election. Plain and simple. Uganda is blocking Twitter and Facebook actually because of election interference. Can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. So yesterday we did a video on the Duran and we titled it How Dorsey Broke the Web, and we talked about how governments now will start to ban Twitter, they will start to ban Facebook, and they will say that Twitter and Facebook are meddling in their elections and in their internal affairs, and they are 100% correct. And in this instance, the United States won't be able to do anything. The Secretary of State won't be able to say anything. The Department of State can't say anything. The US at the United Nations won't be able to say anything because no matter how much the US government complains that American companies are not allowed to operate in other countries, in foreign countries, in other words, US big tech cannot operate in Uganda because Uganda is blocking them, the entire world is just going to look at the US ambassador at the United Nations or the Secretary of State or the spokesperson, the White House spokesperson, and they are just going to laugh. This is just the truth of the matter. They are going to say, are you guys kidding me? Twitter blocked your own presidents. You guys censored your own president. You guys deplatformed your own president. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say, you guys, big tech, you guys censored and deplatformed the oldest newspaper in your country, the New York Post and the Hunter Biden story. They're going to say you guys deplatformed and censored one of your largest newspapers during the election. That's what they're going to say. They are going to laugh. Big tech has destroyed not only the web, but they completely destroyed American soft power. American media soft power. There won't be another Arab Spring because with any type of hint that Twitter is allowing opposition parties to spread a message that's damaging to the ruling government of any country, that government will completely take Twitter offline and they'll completely take Facebook offline. And when the American officials start complaining, every country around the world is just going to sit there and say, please, save it. And I'm sure that all the people that are America First patriots, the 80 million voters, are also going to sit there and say, sorry, stop it. Stop it with your democracy. Stop it with your free speech. Stop it with your human rights. That's what they're going to say. Everyone is going to say it now at this point in time. So I think you're going to see many countries move to completely block and censor Twitter and Facebook, definitely during election cycles, maybe even permanently. Who knows? But I think definitely maybe a month before an election and maybe a month after. Every country, if they're smart, is going to say, okay, we're a month before the election, turn off social media. Block Twitter, block Facebook, so we can have a free and equitable election. Now, I said this during a video I did about Russia, that Russia is now telling all social media companies in the US that if they're going to label Russian media on their profiles as state-sponsored media, then they expect the same for other state-sponsored media channels. For example, Russia says if you're going to label RT underneath their profile as Russian state media, then we expect the BBC to have the same label underneath their profile. Otherwise, remove that label from every media channel's profile. Russia said they demand this. Otherwise, Twitter and Facebook will face punishment inside of Russia, perhaps throttling their traffic down, maybe even perhaps banning those big tech companies from operating in Russia. So Russia wants an equal playing field across big tech. Erdogan, I did a video on Erdogan, who has now said that he will not be using WhatsApp. He'll get his entire government, his cabinet, to stop using WhatsApp because WhatsApp is dangerous. They're going to use a local Turkish messaging company called BIP because Facebook has said that they're going to start mining data from WhatsApp. So Erdogan says, forget about that. So you're starting to see this already. And then, of course, you have Uganda. This is from Big League Politics. The title of the article says, Government of Uganda bans Twitter from country after censorship election interference. The government of Uganda has disabled Twitter within its border for election interference days after oligarch Jack Dorsey took initiative to suspend accounts supportive of President Yoweri Museveni. So Twitter started to interfere in the election, and they started to ban accounts that were favorable to the current government. And I'm sure they started to rise accounts, to amplify accounts that were not favorable to the current government. So you want to know what the government did? They shut them off. And you want to know what the U.S. is going to say about that? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares what the U.S. says? Because Uganda and every country in the world can just look at the U.S. now and say, you guys banned your own sitting president. We don't care what you think about censorship and human rights and democracy. It's that simple. The Pandora's box has been opened. The government of Uganda issued this tweet. The president warns that if the social media channels like Facebook and Twitter are not being friendly and equitable to some of the Ugandans, then there is no reason as to why we should have them operate here. There you have it. Now, Big League Politics says, and this is the irony and the hypocrisy and the clown world we're living in. This is a perfect example. Big League Politics says the big tech platform commenced to wind up a storm after facing consequences for censorship, conveniently dismissing the reality that they were engaged in a wide-ranging campaign to censor figures associated with President Museveni just days before a national election. Twitter tweeted this, Twitter public policy account. Ahead of the Ugandan election, we're hearing reports that internet service providers are being ordered to block social media and messaging apps. We strongly condemn internet shutdowns. They are hugely harmful, violate basic human rights and the principles of the hashtag open internet. This is coming from Twitter public policy. We strongly condemn internet shutdowns. Just days after they shut down the President of the United States. They are hugely harmful, violate basic human rights and the principles of the open internet. Just days after Twitter and all of big tech performed a massive purge on conservative voices and is performing a massive purge of conservative and libertarian voices. And they're saying that Ugandans are violating basic human rights. Do the people at Twitter have a mirror? Do they see themselves? I mean, do they have any sense of awareness as to what's going on? Or are they just run by a bunch of children? The country's communications oversight agency ordered internet service providers to block service to the Western social media platforms as a means to erode their capabilities. Quote, Ugandan Communications Commission hereby directs you to immediately suspend any access and use, direct or otherwise, of all social media platforms and online messaging applications over your network until further notice, read a letter from the state to ISPs. Big League Politics says the government of Uganda is leading the world in opposition to the domination of Western corporations and securing the integrity of Ugandan democracy. Guys, what Uganda has just done is the first of what's going to be many countries blocking social media, Western, US social media applications from interfering, weighing in, being used in any type of election atmosphere. And then it'll eventually lead to just the permanent banning of US big tech abroad. It'll be that simple. The Pandora's box has been opened by Dorsey and Zook, and American soft power, big tech social media soft power is eroding, and it's going to erode fast. Uganda is just the first. Many, many countries will follow suit. So maybe Uganda is actually onto something here. Either way, I think we're going to be seeing many, many countries now adopting the policy of blocking big tech, at the very least during an election cycle, and maybe even more, in order to avoid any type of election interference or color revolutions or regime changes or all kinds of stuff like that. So congratulations once again, big tech. Congratulations, Silicon Valley. Congratulations, Zuck and Dorsey. You guys have not only broken the World Wide Web, but you have completely eroded and destroyed American technology, soft power around the world. So let's listen to what Tucker Carlson has to say.
A group called the Global Public Policy Team at Twitter. Now, I mean, you may have thought Twitter was just a social media company run by some bearded ethereal pothead in downtown San Francisco, but not anymore. While you were sleeping, Twitter got bigger than you ever imagined it could. Twitter is now an independent nation state with its own National Security Council, an interagency constellation of foreign policy experts whose job it is to manage the world's affairs. So Twitter's Global Public Policy Team is really the company's own NSC. So the Global Public Policy people weighed in today, as security councils do, on the upcoming elections in Uganda. And here's what they said about those elections. Quote, ahead of the Ugandan election, we're hearing reports that internet service providers are being ordered to block social media and messaging apps. We strongly condemn internet shutdowns. They are hugely harmful, violate basic human rights and the principles of the hashtag open internet. Access to information and freedom of expression, including the public conversation on Twitter, is never more important than during the democratic processes, particularly elections. End quote. So marinate in that a bit. Just let it sink in. Twitter is reminding the Ugandan people that censorship is immoral. Sorry, Ugandans, you're not allowed to silence other people's Twitter accounts, especially in the run-up to an election. You just can't do that. Now, we recognize you don't have a Bill of Rights or a centuries-old tradition of self-government out there in Uganda, so you might not have known this as we do here. But to restate, censoring voters' social media accounts is hugely harmful. Online censorship violates, quote, basic human rights. In fact, it's an attack on democracy itself. Got that, Ugandans? Now, we understand you're a primitive developing nation, so we'll give you a pass this time. But don't forget it. Censorship, bad. Hashtag open internet. It's almost too good. In fact, we checked to see if it was real. It is.